Keep a fire burning red in a Georgia representing if it comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton Massive. Hey Babylon boy, you going like you like come son. Red.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. Now know what you can have in money. Money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. You can keep, you can have in money. When you've been up for a bum, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. Neighbor, neighbor, joker. That's all the money that we work for. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. A 2 pound note and a kill a piece. This is all the money that we work for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in the Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. There's one set of people getting aisle money. There's one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, with Jah as ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. line. We go again. They got Breakford, Bork, and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow, Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice. And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongley, looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Dam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. This is, Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely needed too. Thank you.
Comes out your son. You burn this wine when I want you shine. The tree of life, them I want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes, I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki. Read that.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Rheinveld Market Meat section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more. Good morning to you. Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. Welcome to the program. How have you been? How you doing? What have you been up to? How was your yesterday? How is your today? How you passed last night? How did you sleep? Rested well? Are you feeling refreshed? Are you feeling energized? Are you ready to take on the challenges before you? Have you set smart goals? What do you look forward to achieving today? That's some of the questions crossing my mind. How many of you have empathized with how many of you have empathized with the host of the, what was the name of the show? Let me just call the guy the Guyanese critic. Yesterday, I filled up my inbox with some video showing somebody bust critic head. Why do you think I would have an interest in that? I'm sure critic is not going to disappear off the scene like Brian Max simply because he got his head busted. Nah, critics is made of stronger metal than that. So y'all don't tell yourself you're gonna bust the on the head and you're gonna disappear. Not under this sun. Money got for me. Right? So I don't know the backstory. If y'all know the backstory, maybe y'all could share the backstory. But really and truly, we ain't got time for that. It's 11 minutes to the 7:30 hour. And we are going to have Nigel Hughes on at around 7:30 so that we can talk about all the things or some of the things you would like to talk about. I am sure he doesn't have the time to talk about all the things. So we have from 7:30 to 8:30 with Nigel Hughes. We have 1 hour with Nigel Hughes. So prepare your questions. You can start sending them to me by WhatsApp if you would like to, because I'm sure everybody is not going to get through when if I open up the lines of calls. Good. Let me remind you that Pastor Roberts' funeral is today, and it's from 12:30 to 3 o'clock at Sandy's Funeral Home. And that Sandy's Funeral Home is in Lodge. What is the name of that street? Is that where Haley Street is? Good. I think it's Haley's. No. I don't know. But it's the first corner of Vicinjon Road going east. Right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm sure most of you know that corner. Right? Chapel Street, I'm told. Pamela Nelson, Chapel Street. You know, I lived just around the corner as a youngster. There was a man named Adams there. Adams had a shop. He used to sell Litco milk. Yeah, Adams. We lived at the back of Adams' shop. He had a building at the back that he used to rent. I would assume that building is still there. I know the shop is still there, but it doesn't operate. Is it Johnson? No, I'm not likely to carry the service. Let me say that. If there's live streaming, I find the link, if they give me the link, I will share it to Cam's TV so that you guys can follow the service. But I did indicate from us being aware that pastors died, that I was willing to carry the service. I've had no permission from the family so far to carry it. I think this is the 11th hour, and so it will be too late. Good. But whoever is streaming, once I find the stream, I will share it to Cam's TV page. So those of you who have an interest in, being in the tech ops, being in the know, would get the opportunity to see it. Right? Yes, I do hope you understand that. Good. But that's that. I'm not the kind of person. I see people who turn up at events, turn up at weddings, even accidents and all kinds of things. And by the time you could say knife or life, they got the people business on social media. I don't do it like that. Good. I do not do it like that. Especially in times of bereavement, I think people deserve their privacy. And so it's gross to go pushing a camera in people's face without permission, even the dead. Right? Good. Yes, I was saying you can start formulating those questions. I told you since yesterday, because I don't want you to come and formulate them on the phone when you get the opportunity to call in. I want us to have a well-structured program this morning. I always try for a well-structured program. I don't always succeed. Right? But that's the intention today. So let's work on that together. So Lou's Kitchen is offering dinner. Dinner is served from 17 hours, and you can dine in, you can take out, you can request delivery, and they also accept MMG payments. So those, well, you have to order to start with, right? For now, they're serving dinners only by order for now. And so my advice to you is, if you have an interest in what they're offering, then you can start placing those orders. You can start placing your orders today for tomorrow or early in the morning for later in the afternoon. Right? Even up to midday, orders will be taken up to 12 midday so that they can be satisfied for when you're getting home from work. Good? Yes, Lou's Kitchen. Dinner served from 17 hours. A partial menu is roti, puri, pot bakes, float bakes, cook-up, fried rice, demerara rice, stews and gravies, veggies, salted fish, stewed fish, chicken, curries, etc. etc. Of course, no poster can hold everything. So some of the things you'll have to inquire to know about. Dine-in, takeout, delivery available. Call or WhatsApp 653-3205. 653-3205 for Lou's Kitchen. And let me also tell you that, Club Twilight is presenting on the 1st of November Short Pants and Skirts, a soca party with Trinidad Madman and DJ Alliance, right? Both from Trinidad. Cams Audio, Disco Baby Song System, Singer Man, One Man Band. And that is taking place at Sideline down Buxton North. Admission is easy on the pocket, easy squeezy. So that's the 1st of November. Club Twilight presents Short Pants and Skirts. Come down to that soca party and have a very good time. And since the season is upon us, let me tell you that Rhonda's homemade seasoning is available. You can call Rhonda at 602-6241 for seasoning for all your meats and fish and flavorings of stew, etc., etc. Of course, Rhonda's homemade seasoning is made from locally acquired herbs and so on and so forth. Good. Call Rhonda 602-6245, 602-6241. And you can do that either by straight call, as we see, or you can go the easy and cheap way. WhatsApp. And if you're looking for that special crunch, you want to snack naturally and you want to crunch joyfully, then you should be contacting Golden Crisp for plantain chips, chicken foot, grated and chipped sugar cake, etc. They can be contacted on 668-9542 or 641-8258. Golden Crisp is located at Friendship Village on the east coast of Demerara. Delivery is available, but that's, of course, it's an arrangement you'll have to make when you're ready to place that order. And let me tell you also that the producers of Mocha, don't forget that the producers of Mocha, they still exist and they still things like chicken ham and so on and so forth, right? Contact them. It's Christmas season. The season is upon us, and so you will need meat, you'll need seasonings, you'll need vegetables and so on. Even during Christmas, you must eat your vegetables. It's healthy for you. Looking for fresh coconut water, that too is available. The producers of Mocha, you can contact them, right? What else do I need to tell you? Of course, Club Twilight is available for rental for the Christmas season. If you have an event that you're planning, you can hit us up at Club Twilight and let us make it possible for you. It's a 360-degree service, I like to call it. You have everything here. Hall, music, decor, and everything is right here, utensils and everything. So you can take the stress out of hosting and host happily ever after. Host in such a way that you have a beautiful event, you're not stressed and so on. I want to, I'm making an offer. Who plans to get married from now to the end of the year? Hit me up, let's give you a package. Hit me up. If you're planning a wedding and you're looking for a hall, come let's talk at Club Twilight. We're going to give you a great package. A lot of discounts as your wedding gift. And this is no idle gaff. This is no idle gaff. Come, even if you're planning a Christmas party, staff parties and so on, family reunions and so on, come down to Club Twilight, man. Let's take care of you. We will take good care of you. And with that said, let me tell you that EC Party Rentals has chairs and tables and folding chairs and folding tables and 4x4 tables and all kinds of stuff for rental, including portable toilets and cooler boxes, chafing dishes, and so on and so forth. Yes, you're looking for stuff to host, you can hit us up at EC Party Rentals, and we're going to make life again easy for you. Transportation is available. You ain't gotta study a thing about fetching anything. You place your order, you get your nice Christmas discounts, and you're good to go. And let me also inform you that Christmas market, remember we were planning Christmas market. Christmas market is going to take place on the 20th of December in Buxton at the same location we were for the Business Expo. Right? So December 20th, it's a Friday. Yes, it's a Friday. Don't start shouting, hey, Mr. Amsterdam is Friday. Yes, it's a Friday. Market day will start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you know what that means? It means we are going into the night with market day. So it's a day-night market. And those of you who have the stamina, the possibility is we will go right through the night and continue the market Saturday morning, which is the 21st, right? So start planning. Those of you who are producers, like Runders and T-Bones and Why Worry and Golden Crisp and producers of Mocha and all of the people who were there the last time, I know you guys are listening, so you should start putting your stuff together. We welcome new exhibitors, those who are into furnishings and those who are into Christmas decor and ornaments and so on. You are welcome. Call us on 682-7981. WhatsApp us on 682-7981 for more information about that. Good. It's 28 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour. I'm awaiting the arrival of Nigel Hughes, and so we can get the program on. Let me see, because sometimes I mess up sometimes. So let me just ensure that I didn't mess up this time. But I wonder, somebody is asking me if I'm on because you're not locating. Right? I don't know how true that is, that they're not locating me. So here what you all going to do for me now. Every single one of you, share the live. Please do that. Share the live. If you recognize that there's somebody that should have been on that is not on, oh, I think I see what happened. Are we going to fix that right now? We did not connect to YouTube. We're connecting to YouTube right now as we speak. I'm sorry, it happens. You see, the devil is in the works, you know. The devil is in the works. Yeah, so start sharing the live. If you notice somebody who's always on that is not on, just hit them up. Say, hey, we on, you know where you are at. Hit them up. Let them know that we're on. And so we can get the show, the program on the road. Give me just a minute. Let me see what's happening. Waiting. Oh, done. Good. So here we are. It's 25 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour on the 1st of October in the year 2024. And we have in studio with us Nigel Hughes, our senior counsel. I always make that clear. Good morning to you, sir. Welcome to.
Good morning, Kadaki.
How are you?
I am good. It's a real pleasure to be on your program. Actually, it's a privilege. I have listened to your program often, and I appreciate this, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak with your audience.
Good, very well. I'm sure they appreciate you coming on. I certainly appreciate the effort. I know as the most senior attorney in this country,
No,
you're very busy.
You're too kind, David.
You're very busy. That's not being too kind. That's not up for debate. Yes, they say beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. We know what we see. Good. So, Nigel, you're talking to us this morning as leader of the Alliance to Change. You know, CAMS TV, BUXTONIAN Morning Time, Guyanese Morning Time is about the political happenings for the greater part and things. So, a lot of questions are being asked. I'd like you to, as I would say, give us your pitch as leader of the AFC. Talk to us about what your vision is. And then we'll try to interact with you and find out more about that vision. Your mic is muted. You are muted. You are muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much again. And particularly to the people in Buxton, I say thank you for affording me the opportunity. If you asked me to give a political pitch, with your permission, I prefer to be able to give a Guyana pitch so that we get a sense of where the country is rather than looking at it from a narrow political party perspective. And to do that, I want to start with where we are and the amount of wealth that is coming our way, which we are not seeing, which is being diverted away from the nation into private pockets. And then, of course, the consequences of that, the people who get deprived of that opportunity, and what the deprivation means, not just for this generation, but for the generations going forward. And of course, I will share with you proposals that we have. The country is earning $65 to $66 million an hour, and we're up to $1.6 billion a day.
That's US you're talking about?
No, Guyana dollars.
Okay,
1.6
good.
billion Guyana dollars per day. That's still a significant amount of money. It's like $8 million a day, $8 million US dollars per day. If you look at the state of affairs, I just went on Sunday to Lancaster and Liverpool and Manchester on the quarantine. All of them African communities, all of them from a pure infrastructural point of view. Poor infrastructure, partial roads repaired. And then when you look at the human resource, the young people getting 10-day jobs, nothing permanent, they can't plan their future. One of the critical aspects of making the amount of money that we make requires us to have long-term plans, and also requires us to have that wealth directly felt by the citizens. There are two principal ways for doing this. They're not exclusive. One, direct transfers to the citizenry, and two, apart from direct transfers, you actually have economic development plans that specifically empower the young people. And then if I could address them one by one. There's a theory, an economic theory called the trickle down, which in effect says that when you have this sort of wealth in the society, you allow the people who make money, the big businesses, to make money, but the effects will trickle down to the man in the street. It never happens, or if it happens in such a minuscule level, the people don't feel it. We, for the first time in our history, have been the beneficiaries of immense wealth. And that wealth is actually generating an income right now. It's not what we were before where we had potential. This wealth is actually coming to us at the rate of $8 million US a day. We're less than 1 million people. For the average citizen to really feel the impact of this, we are advocating that you have direct transfers to every citizen. So it's not a question of when the politician rolls through a community and decides he's giving out money to some people who support him, money to one group that might support him, and not money to the other. This should be a structured approach. And we're advocating that we pass legislation that says, look, a pool of economists will determine exactly how much of the National Resource Fund is available for immediate distribution to every citizen. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what you look like. All that will happen is that on your birthday, this sum will be transferred either to your account, or if you don't have an account, you go with the appropriate verification documentation and you collect that amount. There's been a lot of, and I was one of the persons who initially reacted adversely to that, saying, oh, the people are going to get lazy and they're not going to, they're not going to want to work. And that was a very, if I dare say, middle class reaction. I have since read deeply about cash transfers and money transfers directly to the citizenry. And I am convinced that, especially in Guyana, our people are so economically resourceful that they will be able to take that money and use it towards the collective good. So, for example, if you have 3 adults in a household and the amount per annum is $1 million, you then have a pool of money that you can use as a resource to invest in a business or improve your home or invest in some form of economic advancement. And that way the citizen who has a right, and he has a right not to have the government decide how he should spend his money or how she should spend her money. That money should be transferred directly to them and they decide what they're going to do. That's one. The cost of living, which we are all suffering from, but more so those that are less resourced, have less finances, it is absolutely not only extremely difficult, but it is a temptation for you to behave less than lawful. To watch a whole set of people who are fortunate, drive around in fancy cars, spend a lot of money. You see them on social media doing lots of great and wonderful social things, and you can't even feed your children. You're struggling in an economy in which $8 million is coming to the government, and it's less than 800,000 people. It means also, apart from the cash grant, we have to make sure that we have immediate economic measures that we take that will provide a relief from the burden of the current cost of living. Stabrook does a wonderful article, series of articles every Monday, and you see that real Guyanese, the majority of them are really struggling to make ends meet. Now, if you're struggling to make ends meet in a time of plenty, it means that you can't even begin to invest or make investments, whether you want to go put money in savings. You don't even get to that position. You are always in a position where you're moving literally from hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck. And we must be able to put in place an economic system that not only allows our people to afford the basic cost of living, but gives them an opportunity to save and use those savings for investment. I want to come to, for me, one of the priority areas for the Alliance for Change, which is education. As you know, Kadaki, if you're not educated, if you don't take advantage of the education system, in the economy that will be dominated by oil and perhaps gas for the next 15 years, let's pick 15 years because 15 years is perhaps the life of some of the wells, and Liza 1 and Liza 2 at the rate at which they're extracting oil. If you don't do that, if you don't qualify, if you don't become certified, if you don't become skilled or semi-skilled, you are not going to be able to meaningfully participate in this new economy, because the jobs that are going to be generated and created by this new economy will require skilled and semi-skilled employees. If you look at the official statistic, 50% of the students that enter secondary school are not finishing it. That's a scary number. That means 1 out of 2 students that go into secondary school are not coming out with any certification at all. So from the beginning, they will not qualify for any of the preferable jobs, whether skilled or semi-skilled, in the new economy. Now, okay, we're losing them, but they're not lost. We should have, as a country, a program, not a remedial program, a program that trains these young people who didn't make it through secondary school academically, but they got fantastic skills in terms of vocation. That has to be a massive program. It's not just a little program here and a small program there. This has to be a national program where those people can be captured. They go into 6-month courses, with a lot of emphasis on discipline. And we know that when they go in there, some of them will have families. They can't sustain the families while they're being educated, which has always been a challenge for a lot of people in Guyana. You can't afford to go to university in Guyana because you got to make a choice between your children and getting educated. And we're saying that when these young people and not so young people go on these courses, they will get a stipend from the state, which will allow them to be able to maintain their families while they're studying to get better, while they're studying to be able to qualify themselves so that they can either gain employment in the new oil and gas economy, or they can start their own businesses. So if you go on a 6-month welding course, vocational skills provided by the state, you get your stipend, you come out of that certified as a welder who would be able to provide either as jobs as an employer, or you would be qualified for the employment opportunities that exist in the economy. And in that way, what you do is you begin to give that young person who may not be academically inclined an opportunity to make real money. What is happening now is that if you don't qualify and you come out of secondary school, you don't get any certification, you don't get into a tech school, you don't go to a trade school, for whatever reason, you don't have the resources, or you don't think you're qualified to go there, you literally are shut out from participating in the better jobs. It means that you're going to be left to do the lower end jobs in the economy. And as a consequence, your income will be lower. Now, the oil and gas industry is a 24/7, 365-day per year industry. It never shuts down. It can't afford to shut down. And so it's not a question of whether there will be a demand for skilled and semi-skilled labor. That demand will be there. And Guyana and Guyanese, once we are not filling those jobs have to be filled. So they're going to be filled by people who come from overseas. We know that. We're not hostile to that. But what we're saying is that we must be preparing our young people to be able to take more of those jobs. Now, with the 50% that are not finishing secondary school, they're going to see all these non-Guyanese people, because they're probably going to be very evident and obvious from the physiology, driving around, better jobs, consequently better housing and better transportation, and they will be living a far more affluent lifestyle, restaurants, etc. And there is inevitably going to begin to be formed a strong sense of resentment, because those people now who didn't finish school, didn't get certification, there's no provision for any training for them afterwards. They're going to watch the rest of the society that doesn't necessarily look like them progress and ask themselves, well, look, I'm a Guyanese. We're making $8 million. In the next 5 years, that's going to go up to $60 million US dollars per day. So it's going to double. It's going to go to $130 million a day, because that's just that's the given projection. And they're going to say, well, hold on a minute. I'm a Guyanese. My parents suffered here. I've seen my grandparents buried. They were poor. We struggled. We came up. We were in the village. They didn't actually have any sort of support services. We have literally struggled. We've worked in the civil service. We've been police people. We provided all these services to the state. And now when we have a lot of money, we see none. All we get is a politician coming through every month, 2 months, sharing out some money and then telling me that I have to vote for that particular government because they're sharing out the money. And I'm in a bad state. And I ask myself, well, what is this income and this oil that we're from which we're making all this money. What does this mean to me? And then you will reach a stage where that resentment will transform itself into something that is a lot worse and a lot more dangerous for the society. You know, one of the things about trying to avoid errors is that you need to look at examples that exist before, and we see what happens in Trinidad. Trinidad is a very, very sophisticated, very modern society compared to ours. But Trinidad has a serious problem with gangs. And it's only a matter of time before the criminal enterprises, or the head of the criminal enterprises in Trinidad and Venezuela, come to Guyana. Now, I don't know how much confidence you have in the law enforcement agencies in Guyana to be able to handle that situation. But if they can't even handle the sindicatos on the border, how are they going to really begin to address the kind of social consequences that come from very well organized criminal enterprises that are well armed, better armed than the police, probably more mobile, have the communications capacity that outstrips the police? And how are we going to deal with that? And when you lay that on top of a fragile ethnic, racial society, you've got problems. So we're saying, look, for education, the Alliance for Change is saying, this is your most important priority. And in July, when we had our conference, we started off by saying, look, there are 5 key areas which all the political parties and civil society should agree upon a 15-year plan. Because we don't want to have, at every election cycle where you change the government, plans get disrupted, especially in these 5 areas. And these 5-year areas are education, the economy, foreign affairs, health, and the reduction of poverty. You can't have the wealth we have coming in at the rate it's coming in and not address poverty. Now, in real terms, for the young people, especially the women, most people have great ideas, but just don't have the financial resources to be able to get that business idea off the ground. So for a lot of our young people, especially the women who tend to be more successful and entrepreneurially than the men, and you may question me on the data on that, but we need to be able to create an environment in which they can develop business plans which are commercially viable. We can give them access to the finances to capitalize their businesses. And these can be small businesses, they don't have to be medium-sized. And be able to help them prepare projections for the year, market their products, and help them become successful business enterprises. Those little business enterprises that they start, once they keep their records, they maintain their bank accounts, they get a credit rating, they are going to sit down like any other business and make plans for expansion for the next year. So it's only going to be a matter of time before what is probably considered a small, somebody starts a little pepper sauce business, some ladies come together in a collective, they manage it, they get the business plan, they get the appropriate marketing plan, they get a real catchy brand name, and they then, within 2 to 3 years, can start looking how they're going to export, how they're going to build out a factory, how they're going to be able to stay compliant. One of the things that has happened to Guyana is that we have lost our managerial or entrepreneurial class. And if you ask the average person that comes out and graduates from University of Guyana, whether they rather stay or go, most of them will say go. Now that is the ultimate paradox of Guyana. You have more wealth coming in every day to the country, and more than 75 to 80% of your graduates from university, and I'm only picking university, it could be any educational facility. If they're given a choice between a visa or permanent residence in the US and staying in Guyana with all its wealth and promise, they're going to choose to go, or Canada or wherever it is. That is actually an indictment on all of us. It means that young people don't actually see their medium and long-term future here in Guyana. Now that's a real issue, because if you're brightest that are coming out of university, don't feel that they have a future here, where there is such a great growth in the economy, fastest developing economy, if they don't feel that their chances here are as good as they are somewhere else, it means that the society will never really develop, because the skills that are needed to develop the society will not stay. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're a food technologist, whatever area you're in, you're not going to want to stay. And you can't build a sustainable society where all your young and talent and your managerial talent want to leave, don't feel comfortable here. And this is across races. This is not a case where just one set of young people who are of a particular ethnic background don't want to stay. So we have to ensure that we begin to put policies in place that will make Guyana attractive for that managerial class. Fidel Castro, when he was reflecting, I think must have been 15, 20 years after the revolution, about things that he would have done differently. One of the things that he said is that he would have tried to keep that managerial class, some people call it middle class, in the country, because they're the people that run and keep the things going. He would have tried to have kept all those people who were skilled, the nurses, etc., who fled. He would have tried to keep them there. Good thing about Cuba is that they concentrated on human resource development in a serious way. In the schools, we have to change the way in which we teach. We have to teach critical thinking rather than volume. Because if you did a comparative analysis between the way young people in Guyana perform and come back into the society and contribute, and you compare that to the rest of the Caribbean, I don't think we come out favorably. So for education, again, I propose, and this is to all the political parties, parliamentary and non-parliamentary, as well as civil society. Let's sit down, hammer out a 15-year plan, examine what it is that we're not doing right, agree this plan, put it in place, and whoever gets elected, we stick with the core plan. We are faced with the hideous statistic of young people in Region 9. And I'm only picking Region 9 because those are the only statistics I have at the moment, but I'm getting the rest. The matriculation rate is 8%. Do you understand that? After you spend 5 years in school, at a cohort of 200 kids go in and they come through the school system, 8% of that, 16 kids out of those 200, will actually matriculate, i.e. they have a piece of paper that says that they passed these subjects. Our official maths pass rate is 31%. Pass is different from matriculation. That is lower than the Caribbean, which means in terms of competitive advantages in areas which require mathematics as a core element in being able to develop. So anything to do with technology, to do with the development of higher end skills, engineering, all the major developmental professions and skills that are required, we are at the bottom. We are below the already poor average of the Caribbean. And if you grew up in Lethem or you grew up in Region 9, your maths pass rate is 8%. Where are you getting the opportunity to be able to position yourself either to get a better qualified job or to be able to start a business because you understand what's going on? And that brings me to our actual educational facilities. The University of Guyana ought to now, with the wealth we have, become a premier educational facility with research capacity. You can't have a university and talk about development in a serious sense and not have it exceedingly well funded so that, one, it attracts, we can start by attempting to attract from the Caribbean the best and brightest professors who can come to Guyana, not only lecture, but they can go on a research program well funded which will result in technological and other developments in any field, biological, chemical, agriculture, that will inure to our benefit. Labs. If you talk about the Gold Project, that's online learning. How are you going to do online learning in disciplines that require labs? Computer labs, biological labs, chemical labs, labs for physics, engineering labs. Once we have the resources which we have now, need to make sure that University of Guyana outstrips all the other tertiary level education facilities in the Caribbean. We also have to have, I would say, a separate educational facility that deals with technical training, technical subjects. So the mathematics, the physics, just as how you have in University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT, and you give it that mandate and you fund it. You fund it so that coming through the whole product, so from primary school, we change the way in which we teach kids so that their critical analytical ability, by the time they get to grade 6 exams, they then go into better schools, not just the top 5 or 6 there, but across the country, we build out the capacity in those schools. Now, we don't have the teachers here in the numbers that we need. And the teachers here themselves need augmented training. So this is where you got to spend your money. You got to spend your money on training the teachers so that they can deliver that product, incentivize them for it, but also they have to be penalties where they don't deliver. But just to come back to the university, feeding into that would be all these kids that come out after sixth form into the university, and they come out highly qualified in relevant fields. So we have to have a concentration of our educational curricula at the university in disciplines that are relevant to the development of Guyana. So to pick a ridiculous example, we're not going to put money into the faculty for nuclear science. We're not there yet. I'm not saying that some stage down the road we might or might not need nuclear energy, but it's not relevant at the moment. So we need to be able to do that. But we know that University of Guyana itself can't provide for all the best and brightest we have. So we have to adopt a policy, which the Alliance for Change advocates, that there's a cohort of top whatever percent, 5, 10% of our students, who we need to send to the best educational facilities on the planet. So if they're in technology, they go to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. If they are good at engineering, we send them off to Imperial College in London, whatever. We need to take a decision that our best and brightest, we will afford them the educational opportunities, whether by way of scholarships or otherwise, that they go internationally and they get the best training. They can, some may not want to come back, but once the environment is correct and is good in Guyana and attractive, we then get all these people coming back. They don't all have to work with the state. They can go into private enterprise, but they are available. So that when some politician jumps up and says, "Oh, I want to put a project I want to put an airport in some remote part of the country in which the numbers don't make sense," there is such a body of people in the country who will say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. What's wrong with this guy? You can't be seriously saying that." And so the general education level in the country is elevated. The Asians, and I remember this, and it's many years ago, I was in university probably close to 40 years ago. In my class in the UK, there were very few foreign people. Out of the class, they might have had a maximum of 8%. Other than myself, all the other foreign students were either from Singapore or they were from Malaysia. And in our discussions with them, or in my discussions with them, they said the government of Singapore and the government of Malaysia had taken a decision that their best and brightest, they will send them to the best and brightest institutions in the West, and they will come back better trained. If you think of where China is today in terms of technology. Just look at Huawei. Huawei technologically is as powerful as in their capacities as you, whether you take Microsoft, Google, what have you. And how did they get there? They got there from a long-term plan that identified technology as one of the key areas that China needed to dominate the world in. And my God, haven't they done that? The South Koreans as well, Samsung. So we have to prepare for the fact that oil, first of all, is a primary product, and there's nothing that we did to put it there. So we're not benefiting from this because of something that we did or our ancestors did. We just got lucky. But now that we're lucky, now that we have the financial resources and we're blessed with a small population, we have to begin to develop those resources that will provide for us in the future and our children. And the best way to do that is to invest in your people. Invest in your people. I see you've come back. Perhaps it's a sign for me to stop. But
yes, we only have 1 hour with you. Definitely, we'll have to have you return. It's 6 minutes past the 8 o'clock, and from my calculation, we have about 24 minutes to keep you here. So there's some questions, and the first one is your relationship with Exxon.
Yep.
Someone is asking, what is your relationship with Exxon, and do you plan, should you become the next president, how do you plan to hold them accountable for the financial resources, the environment, etc.?
I'm happy you've asked this. I've answered this before, and so I'll just repeat what I said before. My firm, which God bless me, I inherited from my father, has been advising the oil and gas sector long before they found oil. Since my father was practicing in the 70s, every time they had an exploration round, Continental Oil, our firm was the preferred destination. After he left, there were two principal partners, myself and Andrew Pollard. Andrew and I had made a decision somewhere around 2008, 2009 that we're going to up our skills in this area. We courted oil and gas clients. And what we did, like in a lot of firms, specific clients get allocated to one partner or the other. Exxon and Hess were allocated, and they're in Andrew's exclusive portfolio. The way the firm operates, he exclusively advises them. There are quite a few other oil and gas firms that I advise. When I got elected and so this was not a problem at any stage, we advise clients like we always do. When I got elected as the leader of the Alliance for Change early in July this year, actually it was in David Hinds' program that I disclosed that the firm works for Exxon because they're the only operator in town in terms of oil and gas. And that insofar as any decisions have to be made in relation to Exxon, the Alliance for Change has set up a completely separate committee that has exclusive authority to make all those decisions. I have nothing to do with it. I don't ask them about their decisions, and they publish their decisions by themselves. So Dr. Vince Adams, David Patterson, and Professor Shamir are the people in that committee. And if people attend the weekly press conferences that we have, they deal with oil and gas. And so I don't have anything to do with it. What I have said is that if elected to the office of president, I will relinquish my relationship, which is obvious. I can't be in Hughes, Fees and Stobie and be president of the country, or I can't be in Hughes, Fees and Stobie and be a minister or any other position. I will relinquish that relationship with Hughes, Fees and Stobie. And this is not an unprecedented situation. It happens all the time. Prime Minister Patterson in Jamaica was head of a law firm that was very successfully relinquished that relationship when he became Minister of Finance. David Thompson in Barbados, similar situation. So this is not unprecedented. So once elected, and once I take up an official position, my relationship with Hughes, Fees and Stobie terminates. I don't know if that addresses the question you've just put. Kidaki, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I was muted, sorry. I was saying thank you for your response. The other question which is asked is, what is your view on coalition? Do you believe that coalition is necessary to remove the PPP from government? Are you, as leader of the AFC, even thinking about coalescing before the elections?
Okay. You asked me a lot of questions where I have to repeat what I said before, but I welcome the opportunity.
The viewers are asking.
Right. No, of course. It's a very important. I get this question every day. And this is our position. One, the principal objective in terms of coalition is what is in the best interest of Guyana. If the best interest of Guyana at the time of elections suggests that there should be a coalition, absolutely. That's what they suggest. What I've said, and the position of the party is that, as you know, the first outing, I think we got 5 seats. Second outing, we got 7 seats, and then we combined and we won the government. But the Alliance for Change has suffered some significant degree of damage in terms of its electoral appeal and its electoral prospects. And since the party members asked me to become the leader, I am concentrating the next few months, and since July to now, I've been dedicating my time and energies to doing a couple of things. One of them is listening. We have to go, we can't assume what the people want. So we got to go out to every community to listen to the people, to hear where they are at. So we are in a listening and grounding tour. And while we're doing that, we are also strengthening or attempting to strengthen the party as an electoral element. So that's where we are. In this process, especially where there has been no announcement of an election, and where the time frame for the election, and if you believe those in the government who said that the elections won't be held until November, there is no immediate urgent pressure for what you're asking me, coalition. We are building out our party. When we feel that we have arrived at a stage where we have a very keen sense of what the public wants, and when we are sure that it is in the best interest of the country that there be combinations, and coalitions don't necessarily mean just the two parties. It could be civil society elements. There could be some of the other parties that are currently in existence and in opposition. We're going to have conversations with everybody, because to take this country forward, I don't believe one single political entity can do it. We have to have a lot more collaboration across the floor. Otherwise, what will happen is while we are fighting each other tooth and nail, somebody else is going to come in very subtly, or they don't even have to come in. Excuse me. They will take the benefit of this country by tying it up in various agreements and loans for projects that perhaps are not necessarily feasible. And by the time we realize what happened, it's going to be too late. So that's why we've been advocating sort of long-term plans, state planning agencies, state planning commissions. But to come back to your question, my position is, and the Alliance for Change's position is, at the moment, we just got to start building ourselves up. If you recall correctly, people were mocking us. They were saying we were a dead party. We have nothing to get. We don't appeal. I haven't heard a lot of that recently. I heard a lot of other things. But we got to do the fundamentals. And we have excellent fraternal relations with both the Working People's Alliance and the People's National Congress, along with the members of that.
Thank you. We have a call on the line. Flash Gordon, you're on.
Wow, you keep it 30 minutes. That's good. Good morning to you and all my black brothers and sisters. Good morning to you, Mr. Nigel Hughes.
Morning, sir.
Please, quick. I was lucky enough to shake your hand 2015. Stop you and shake your hand and give you my condolence when your mother passed away. It was a sad day that day. But thank God that you give that elder strength to go that extra miles up to today. Let me move on. Now, Flat Garden to you. When you become president, if you become president for United Guyana, would you agree with Flat Garden this morning that you will take us out, including myself because I'm a born Guyanese, out of CCJ and the Caribbean and CARICOM, and we just do business with CARICOM. Number 2 question. Would you agree with Flash Garden that if you become president, if you go in parliament and pass a law, that all male Guyanese must, we will leave the door open for female if they want to, but it must not be a thing for them must go. But all male must serve the country. Why? Because we do leave our country and go to other country and become army men and women. Thank you for listening to me. Let me hear your.
Thank you for your questions.
First of all, Mr. Gordon, thank you so much for expressing your sympathies in relation to the passing of my mother. I appreciate that. I'm afraid I'm going to have to deviate from your opinions on a couple of things. One of them, the CCJ. I understand why people may arrive at a place where they are skeptical or hesitant about the Caribbean Court of Justice. I'm not in that place. We need a final court of justice like the CCJ. Guyana was very progressive in the 70s when we abolished the Privy Council, because the Privy Council didn't have any sense of what was happening in Guyana, and we had very strong jurists at the time who sat on the court, whose various judgments were subsequently vindicated, both by English and other courts. The Caribbean Court of Justice is relatively insulated, at least the structure, from political interference. And that has always been the fear about courts in Guyana. People have traditionally, even when you've had the brightest of judges, you have HINDS and various persons, they've always felt that they were subject to some level of and so when we got the CCJ, we were elated that there was a court of the best and finest jurists in the Caribbean who were going to sit and deliberate upon our appellate matters. Now, every day, some lawyer, if he's worth his or her salt, is going to lose a case. That's a fact. You don't win all your cases. If you tell me you won all your cases, then I don't believe that you're necessarily a serious lawyer. But we have to be careful that because we lose a case, we don't lose respect for the court. And I think what has been happening is that there have been decisions, because we have such a high level of political cases to go into the system, it means that there's going to be a high level of disappointment for one side or the other. And in Guyana, where political power is a life or death issue, if you lose political power, you got nothing to get when you're out of office. The system doesn't allow you to participate. You're trampled upon, disregarded, insulted, etc. by the people in power. So,
morning, neighbor, morning. Are you welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time? I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It is now 7:28 on the second day of November. Hey, October. Why are you running this year, sir? The second day of October in the year 2024. It's Wednesday. We have Dr. Hinds in the house. And so we're starting at 7:30 almost. I don't want to stay too long in between us. And so let me tell you quickly that, yes, many of you will be wondering, yes, I went to the funeral yesterday of Pastor. Don't ask me how was the funeral. Funeral is usually funeral at some occasion. And I was happy to see some of our regulars from Guyanese Morning Time present and lending support to the family. They also say it's a small world. I was also able to recognize some of the people that are in some way connected to the Roberts family. God, once again, I ask you to keep them in your prayers and give them some strength. Good. You've listened to Nigel Hughes yesterday. You've listened to the replay. I know there might be a lot of questions in your minds and so on. But maybe we will get to those questions on Free Talk Friday. Some people might want to offer an observation here or there on today's program, but today is Dr. Hinds. So let's talk with Dr. Hinds. Dr. Hinds, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning again to you. What happened in Dubai? You weren't in the storm in any way, right? You in a safe place.
Far away.
Got far away.
Not safe place, but far away from the hurricane.
All right, good. There are a number of things I want to talk with you this morning about, Dr. Hines. I want to go back in history to some extent too. And that is because a young person, a young individual, in the person of Buxton Swaps, the operator of Buxton Swaps, did a TikTok the other day, I noticed, asking for the stories behind a lot of the history that she hears in, by the way, like the Son Chapman incident and what caused the riots and so on and so forth. And so I believe we owe it to those young people to teach so that they understand the history and get a better understanding. But before we go there, let me ask you this, or let me say this. On one of my programs, I think it was last week, I had a caller who was saying Dr. Hines is not taken seriously because he sits in the US and he tells politicians here what to do. If he should come home and live and work at the University of Guyana, if he's so concerned about what's happening in Guyana, then maybe he's going to be taken more seriously. Quick response to that call.
No response.
No response, none whatsoever.
It's not even worth it.
All right, none whatsoever, if you see that. I offered some clarity in that you basically live here and you work overseas. But some people seem not to know that. Or they
want to find out people's personal business. These days, if you pee, they want to know where you pee. They want to know. It's not worth it.
But some will say you're a public figure and the public needs to know.
Well, I'm a public figure, so the public knows what they know. The public knows about my public business.
Good. So I said I want us to go back in history. I don't know how far back you can take us or how far back you're willing to take us. But our history tells us that there have been a lot of turmoil in the early days of this cooperative republic of ours. And because a lot of this history is not written, or it's not comprehensively written, a lot of our young people really don't have a clear understanding of what happened. What happened, for example, that caused what we call the St. Bread riots in Georgetown. What happened, for example, that caused the driving out of Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese communities and vice versa. You choose that entry point for us, please. Give us a background to the history. This is what I might call violent and racist history, as some people will put it. And especially I want you to address the Son Chapman incident, because that is what the young lady was particularly interested in.
First of all, thanks for the question. I hate to disappoint, but a lot has been written. It is absolutely untrue that the history of our country, in particular the history starting from about the 1950s to the present, a lot of books. I mean, there are books, a lot of books. I mean, there is a book coming out on Janet Jagan, for example. There are books on the history of Guyana. So there are lots of books out there. And nowadays one can go on the internet and find articles, peer-reviewed academic articles. Some articles are not academic. So there's lots of information there out there. And one just has to go and find them. And books can now be bought on Amazon. So it's not true that the history has not been written. So I just wanted to clarify that. I myself, have a couple of published books that have dealt with our history. Your question about the Son Chapman incident. Well, the Son Chapman incident, as one knows, that there was a launch in those days that plied Georgetown to what was then Wisma Mackenzie, and that launch was blown up in 1964, and it was in the height of the riots, the disturbances of that period, and so therefore it was Linden. It was a predominantly African Guyanese area. The people who died were predominantly, if not all, African Guyanese. And so there were consequences to that incident. One was retaliation on what was seen as a PPP act against African Guyanese, retaliation by African Guyanese against Indians living in Linden, and most of the Indians who lived there were, if you can call it, driven out of the area. And so it's one of those incidents during the period 1961 to 1964 that gave a sense of the extent to which our racial disturbances of that period went. Am I left by myself here, Brother Kadaki? I'm not seeing you. I'm not hearing you. I like to see my interviewer when I'm being interviewed. Hello?
I was expecting a long answer to a short question.
No, never do that. I like to do my interview. I like to engage my interviewers. I engage my interviewees. Makes a good conversation. When I'm not seeing anybody, I feel like I'm talking to myself.
All right, so I'm here. I'm right here. I wasn't too far away.
Not seeing you.
You need to see me.
Yes, it's better for conversation.
All right, so here I am. Here I am. So basically, you give what I would say a contracted answer, or a precise answer, basically by way of, I would say, introduction.
Well, a general answer. It was a general question, so I gave a general answer.
What? All right, we know there were the disturbances. We know there were disagreements. There were fallouts. Who should I say could be considered the aggressors? How did this whole incident about the Sun Trapman being bombed? Who would have come up with such an idea of bombing this Sun Trapman? There are all kinds of arguments.
I wouldn't know those questions. I wouldn't know the answer to those questions.
The fallout from that incident.
There was a commission of inquiry, which was published, and so on. Those issues are very, very sensitive issues. Those issues are discussed from the standpoint of which ethnic group one belong to. If you talk to Indian Guyanese activists about the Sun Chapman incident, they pay less emphasis on Sun Chapman, the Sun Chapman emphasis, and more emphasis on what they call the massacre of Indians following the Sun Chapman. If you speak to African Guyanese, they stress mostly the Sun Chapman incident and not very much the incident involving what I saw as a retaliation against the Indian Guyanese community. So those are issues that one has to be very precise when one is answering questions on those things. I thought you were about to ask who were the aggressors in the riots. The disturbances started in 1961, shortly after the 61 election. But UC Guayana, who was chronicling the events, and I consider him to be the premier expert on that period. He has a couple of booklets, one called Next Witness, which chronicled the attacks on African Guyanese during that period. And it was based on communication. A lot of people wrote to him to tell him what was happening in the various communities. Remember, in those days, we didn't have telephone. Poor people didn't have telephone. You didn't have the internet. So people would write and telegram. And if something happened in the community, African communities, people would write to Brother UC, and he then chronicled it in a book called Next Witness. He called it Next Witness because a commission, the United Nations, I think, was asked to send a commission, or the British to send a commission to Guyana to look into the riots, and he was going to be a witness before that commission. Hence his naming of the booklet, Next Witness. He also has another book called Genocide in Guyana, where he chronicled the events of 1961 to 64. And then he has a more recent book that is called the oh boy, why is it going out of my head?
There's no guilty race.
Well, no guilty race. That's it. Yes, no guilty race. So those three publications really chronicle the events. Brother UC places the beginning of the riots in 1961 when a gentleman from Rosal, Quarantine, I've seen myself now. Yeah, Rosal Quarantine, I think his name was Felix Ross, was killed. And if you speak to the Indian activists, they do not put the beginning of the riots in 61. Brother UC placed it in 61 with a gentleman who was killed. I think he was going home from work and was killed by some Indian Guyanese at Rosal. And then there was an outbreak of violence, ethnic violence on the west coast of Demerara. And that was 1961. A lot of the Indian activists and scholars and Indo-centric activists and scholars placed the beginning of the disturbances in 1962 when there were riots and activities in Georgetown, the 80-day strike and attacks in Georgetown on mainly Indian Guyanese. And so they placed the beginning there. Brother UC places it in 61. And his argument is that in 1961, Indian Guyanese were the aggressors. In 1962 and 1963, when the theater of the developments moved to Georgetown, he contends that African Guyanese were the aggressors in 62 and 63. And in 64, Indian Guyanese were the aggressors. Hence his conclusion that there is really no guilty race, that both races were aggressors at given time during the period of the disturbances 1961 to 64.
You mentioned that there were was at least one commission of inquiry into the disturbances?
No, I didn't. There was a commission of inquiry into the Son Chapman slash what the retaliation by African Guyanese.
Okay, right. So you mentioned, well, as you mentioned, one ethnic group looks at it from one angle, the other looks at it from the other. What were the findings of the commission?
Well,
first, let me ask you: do you believe that the findings of the commission could be considered credible, since it
yes,
was
yes, it was it was a one-person commission. It was I'm easy on names this morning for some reason. But it was a one-person commission, and I consider it to be a fairly balanced report. I have it. I saw it about 2 months ago. I have it in my file here, and I always plan to go back to read it.
So is there anything you can tell us in a nutshell, as we say, from that report?
Well, the report confirmed that there were political motives behind the incidents. I can't recall off the top of my head all the details in the report. I haven't read it in a long time. But I know the report, for example, there were reports that the incidents in Linden were triggered by the murder of the Seawees in our village. 2 farmers who were husband and wife, who were found murdered at the back of the back dam there in Buxton. And they said that when news of that got to Linden, there was retaliation by the people of Linden. And the PPP suggested Guayana was behind it. The Commission of Inquiry, for example, did not place Guayana in Linden. Guayana was nowhere in Linden. He had nothing to do with that. He was in Buxton. He had nothing to do with what was happening in Linden. So there are things like that that are very useful in the report of the commissioner.
I am muted. Sorry, I didn't realize I was muted. Yes. Let me say this so that I'm not judged too harshly this morning. I'm not at my utmost. I got some health issues nagging me right now, so I guess a little distracted by that. But I'm asking you about the Sibley's. What is the background to the murder in the Buxton Back Dam?
I don't know. I don't know what is the background.
How did it have?
I know the murder.
How did it have such a far-reaching effect as to bring about reactions in Linden?
Well, people of Linden is really a community of people from African communities on the East Coast and West Bobis in particular. And so anybody these were people who migrated to Linden from the villages, the African villages, to work in the bauxite industry. And so therefore, they had relatives and still have relatives in the villages. So if something like that happened within the period of the thing, of course, there are people in Linden who are going to be affected.
And is it as a result of the retaliation in Linden against Indo-Guyanese that we have this, what I would say, continued vendetta, because the likes of Ravi Dev and so on continue to discuss these issues, I would say, from a partisan angle, and fan the flames of division?
I wouldn't conclude that they're fanning the flames of division. I want to be very clear about it. I don't want to make those value judgments. People make those value judgments of me every day, that I fan the flames of division. Your questioner said nobody takes me seriously. But the PPP government and Indian Guyanese are accusing me of fanning the flames of division, which will lead Guyana into another disturbance. So much for not being taken seriously. No, I don't want to get into those things about fanning flames. Do Ravidev and comrades comment on what happened in Linden? Yes. Are their analysis of what happened in Linden one-sided? Yes. They downplay the Son Chapman bombings and they overplay the retaliation against Indians. Now, that is normal in ethnic narratives because, you know, they are narratives of suffering. And so, therefore, the ethnic groups and their leaders tend to silence the aspect of the narrative that is not favorable to the group. And they tend to overplay the narratives that are useful to the group. And that happens with the Son Chapman incident.
Thank you. It's 9 minutes to the 8 o'clock hour. Let's talk a little bit. Unless you want to continue further along the line about
No.
Let's talk a little bit, Dr. Hinds, about the Working People's Alliance and the fact that you're the presidential candidate. We are approaching elections 2025. I noticed the ERC sent me an invitation to a workshop that they will be hosting to discuss hate speech, especially that we're approaching the 2025 elections. Do you take seriously the role of the ERC in this country?
Yes, I do. In fact, I was invited to that workshop too. I have to look to see what date it is because I'll try to attend if it's possible, if it doesn't clash with my teaching and other important things. I do take the ERC seriously.
You take them seriously. In your opinion, do you believe that they're fulfilling their mandate?
No. That is not reason for them not to be taken seriously. It is a state agency. It's an agency that has a certain role to play, and it ought to be taken seriously by people, by myself. I can understand the citizens of Guyana at large wouldn't take them seriously, and for good reason. But as a political activist, as a scholar, I have to take them seriously.
Is it your opinion they contribute positively or negatively to race relations in this country?
They do not contribute at all to race relations, positively or negatively.
So what is the purpose?
They're a state agency.
All right, guys. Let's talk about WPA and policy. We had Nigel Hughes on yesterday, and we had him express where the ESC is in terms of education and the country's resources and so on and so forth. Let's talk about WPA's policy areas. We see the unbalanced distribution of the country's wealth. We see excessive borrowing and poor management of those borrowings, if I can call it that. We see that percentage of the nation's children are failing to matriculate. Address some of those issues in.
Well, you give me about 10 questions there.
Yes,
to address,
so that you can choose.
I mean,
so
what,
that you can
what
choose.
you want me to talk about? You ask
so
me.
that you can choose.
No,
So that
no.
I know for a fact we spoke, Dr. Hinds, about the WPA's education interventions, what the WPA intends to do to fix the issue of failing of our young people in the education system. Let's therefore talk about pulling our people out of poverty.
You asked me two things there again. You asked me about pulling out of poverty and education. I don't know.
I said we spoke about. It means that we must have addressed education previously, right? So let's talk about poverty, the cost of living, and how WPA aims to address the issue of cost of living and the poor.
That's a very broad question. A very broad question. The cost of living is a national problem. It's a regional problem. It's a global problem. We are very much part of the global market system, and so Guyana is impacted by what happens in terms of the global market. And so when one is talking about cost of living, one has to speak about it within that context. I assume you're asking from the standpoint of government intervention to alleviate the high cost of living. WPA feels that one of the primary intervention by the government is to ensure that the people have more money to be able to afford the cost of goods and services. And since most of the working people in our society are wage earners, we feel that the question of wages become very important. That one of the ways is to increase wages, especially for people working in the public sector. Of course, one doesn't go and increase wages just for the sake of increasing wages, because that could have implications for the larger economy. And so governments are wary of just, increasing wages willy-nilly. But if you look at the wages that our workers in the public sector are earning, it's way below the wages by their counterparts in countries that are in the similar economic situation as Guyana. And I'm using the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean here. And we are in a better position than all of the English-speaking Caribbean countries because we are getting more revenue coming into our coffers as a result of oil. And so therefore, we can afford better wages. Ironically, we are at the bottom of the list when it comes to wages. And countries that do not earn the kind of revenue that we are earning now, their wages are better. And so we feel that one of the ways that one can begin to intervene is ensuring that our people have wages that can help them to meet the prices in the marketplace. And the prices of goods and services are really a function of the market, because we are an open economy, and so therefore the market for the most part determine prices. I know we kind of like in the business of blaming government for everything in Guyana, But we have to be very clear that the market, what the government does is what is important. And like I said, wages is one of the ways that WPA will go. Of course, there are other areas that can impact the price of goods and services on the thing to make it easier for those who are producing goods and services to cut the cost of production. So, in the agriculture sector, you want to make it easier for goods to move from farm to market. For example, you can grant concessions to people who engage in agriculture and in manufacturing and so forth. So it has to be a multifaceted approach. No single thing is going to alleviate the cost of living. We feel that wages and salary go a long way, but we also feel that government ought to, and if the WPA is part of government, that we ought to explore areas to ensure that the cost of production goes down, and that leads to lower prices in the long run. So we'll tackle it at both ends, both at the end of those who are the producers of goods and those who are consumers of goods.
The PPP currently claims that it has been taking measures on the production side to ease the cost of living for Guyanese, because it has been giving subsidies, let me call them that, tax breaks and so on, to importers and manufacturers. We have not seen the benefits of those quote unquote policies reaching the small man. What different will the WP do?
Well, like I said, I mean, you said the PPP is putting emphasis on giving some concessions to importers and so forth. As we said, we will go further than that. We'll give concessions if it's necessary to importers. We will help local producers of goods and services to cut their costs of production. And we will also raise wages. Like I said, it's a multifaceted approach, a multi-pronged approach. So I suppose that's where we're going to be different from the PPP.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Let's talk now about the management of the oil economy. Many argue that, or many are arguing or have been arguing that, we need to revisit the oil contract. Revisiting the oil contract is going to bring more benefit to Guyanese. Is it your opinion that we really need to revisit the oil contract for Guyanese to get benefits?
Well, all contracts are there to be revisited. The WPA feels that the contract that was signed is there, and there is no reason why it should not be revisited. We don't have any objection to the oil contract being revisited. And so if there is a consensus that's where we need to go, WPA will not object at all to revisiting the contract. The question we will ask is, revisiting the contract to what end? What are you taking to Exxon? What your argument to Exxon is going to be? And those things will have to be worked out. I have great sympathy for the activists who are, raising the ante for a renegotiation of the contract. I have great sympathy for them and support their activism. But the WPA feels that we have to look at it from all sides. We should not just look at renegotiating the contract. We should look at what we are getting from that contract and whether the resources we're getting from that contract are equitably distributed. And if we can show, in our estimation, if we can distribute what we are getting equitably, it strengthens our hand if and when the contract is reviewed or because you have to review it in order to renegotiate it. If and when the contract is reviewed, the hand of the government is strengthened. If the government can show that what it's getting, it's equitably distributed, sensibly used, and that if we were to get more, we will be able to do more and do better with what we have. So it goes both sides. And I am disappointed that the people who are arguing for a renegotiation of the contract pay absolutely no attention to what we are getting and how that is distributed and how that can strengthen our hands if we go to negotiate. And they said that what we're getting is crumbs. Well, comparatively speaking, it's crumbs when you compare what we are getting to what Exxon is getting. You can call it crumbs. I wouldn't call it crumbs because I then compare it to what we're getting now with what we used to get before oil. And when you make that comparison, we are getting a lot. That is why our GDP goes up. Now GDP, of course, there are measurements, there are numbers, and the measurements do not necessarily reflect distribution. So, to say that we are the fastest growing economy, you can't argue against that. The GDP is high. You can't argue against that. And that must come for something. It means that we are getting resources that we never got before. And so we are showing growth. Whether that growth is translated to development is another issue. So the people who are arguing for renegotiation are ignoring the growth. And if they ignore the growth, then they're going to ignore the redistribution of the wealth that is coming in. And we in the Working People's Alliance, we are saying that we are going to pay maximum attention to what we get and how it's going to be distributed. Because we feel that there is the likelihood of instability in Guyana resulting from the poor and inadequate distribution. There's more likely to be instability as a result of that than as a result of the poor contract. Let me put it simply. I don't think Guyanese are going to go on the road and demonstrate because of the poor oil contract. They're more likely to go on the road and demonstrate because of what we get and how it is badly distributed. And so therefore, we want to put more attention to the distribution of what we feel that we can alleviate, well, certainly decrease considerably our poverty. Right now, the poverty rate is somewhere between 45 and 50%, 40 and 50%. The poverty rate is. And we feel if we use what we're getting sensibly. We feel that if we distribute it equitably, then we can get rid of poverty. So I'm saying, despite the bad contract, we can still decrease poverty considerably. That's my argument here. It's not that we should not try to negotiate the contract, but we feel that what we are getting now, if it is used sensibly, if it is distributed equitably, we can put a big dent in poverty. We feel that the distribution should be even-handed, that the government should spend on projects such as infrastructure, other capital projects. We have no objection to those. But we object to the 58% of the budget going to infrastructure. Because we ask why. If you're spending 58% of what you're getting on infrastructure, you're doing that to what end? Are you doing it to attract investors who are going to see better roads, better bridges, which could lead to quicker ground transportation? One assumes that the government is thinking about attracting investors. But okay, nothing is wrong with that. But when the investors come and they have a workforce that is not prepared for the new economy, they will have to bring workers. So you build your roads to attract the investor. But when the investor comes in, the investor can't take advantage of your workforce because you have not trained and prepared your workforce. The investor has to bring in workforce. The investor comes, beautiful roads, but there is power failure, blackout. I mean, I don't know what are the technical aspects last night at the CPL game, but it was a global embarrassment. It's a global embarrassment what happened last night. Now, I'm not blaming the government. I don't know these technical things. But I'm saying there it was the president and all of them there at Providence, and they couldn't get it, and it affected the outcome of the match. If I were Trinidad, I would feel very aggrieved at what happened. So I'm making the point that being the WPA will have a more even-handed approach to the spending. It has to be geared towards a developmental goal. We want our people to be prepared for the petro economy. When we talk about local content for us, the local content is really the content of the skill set of our people. We are more interested in that local content. So we are going to spend more money on education, basic education, to begin with. We're going to spend more money on targeted areas of education and skill set. We believe that we should use some of the money we're getting from oil to kickstart our agricultural sector. And so therefore we will train people in the area, in that area. What crops are we going to encourage people to grow? What kind of, are we going to have processing facilities to go hand in hand with crops that people are growing? Now, all those things call for an overall plan. So it is the overall plan that will dictate your spending. And the WPA is saying our overall plan will be much broader than what the PPP has. And so therefore our spending would reflect our overall plan. The alleviation of poverty. We think that is a bottom line. The improvement of the skill set of our human capital, meaning our people, very important. Management of the oil and gas economy. We feel that we should have a national oil company, which will bring more wealth to our country, because you'll have a national oil company that can bid for some of those oil blocks, that can bid for oil blocks in Guyana and outside of Guyana, and so bring more revenue to the country. What we are hearing from a lot of our comrades on the side that is arguing for a new contract is that we have to renegotiate the contract. We're going to get more money, and then we will develop. And we are saying that while we wait for the contract to be negotiated, renegotiated, if we ever get there, that we can do a lot with what we have. And as a country, we ought to be making more progress than just the GDP, just the growth rate. We have to move from growth rate to development, and that is what the WPA is interested in, is how we translate the wonderful growth rate, the numbers that we are seeing, how we then translate that to development. And we therefore have to look at the areas of the political economy that we can invest in and show dividends that we can then talk about development. Right now, we're talking about growth. And I hear innocent Guyanese come back and they see a couple of roads and they say, wow, Guyana is being developed. Roads don't develop you. Roads by themselves don't develop a country. It's nonsense, all right? So we have these great numbers. They have yearly report, 47.8%. That's growth. But where is the concomitant development? And so, and so therefore, we are going to be concentrating on development. The education sector, in terms of the oil sector, the PPP is spending on hospitals, buildings. But when we need very serious surgeries, we still have to fly our people out of the country. We will spend part of the resources training top-level technicians, and then not training them, but paying them proper wages and salaries so they can come back and work in our health sector, so that when our people get sick, they don't have to run and go overseas. So one, you train a cadre of healthcare workers, top of the line, and if you train them, when they come back, you pay them properly so that they can then develop our healthcare sector beyond just buildings. The University of Guyana, the WPA will do everything to turn the University of Guyana into a Research One university. It's our only university. We are a petro state. And so that has to be the hub of research. We're not saying that we will abandon teaching, because there's what you call teaching university. UG will be both a teaching university and a research university. And so we'll have to upgrade the University of Guyana. Of course, they have to be physical upgrading. I pass that place all the time. And I wonder whether it's a university. Just the physical look doesn't tell you it's a university. So we have to do a lot of infrastructure there. But more than that, what we need is to have the best professors. And if you're going to get the best professors, you will have to pay. There are people who are still teaching at the University of Guyana with bachelor's degree. That's a sin. It's a sin. You can't even be a teaching assistant in a normal university with a bachelor's degree. At a minimum, persons have to have a master's degree. WPA will spend resources and get those, professors and lecturers there to send them to get their PhDs and their advanced degrees and to train. And when they come back, to pay them comparable wages to what they're paying at the University of the West Indies and other regional universities. So those are some snippets of the areas that our party want to pay attention to.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. It's 20 minutes past the 8 o'clock hour. I am going to open up the lines now so I can have the input of viewers, comments and questions. The lines are open. 6225-933 is the number to call. You're tuned to the Guyanese Morning Time. First call. Call you on.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Good morning, everyone in the Guyanese diaspora. Dr. Hines, I'm elated to hear your overall plan. It sounds a very sound plan for capacity building. I didn't hear much about the judicial system and addressing the issues of justice in your overall plan. And I was wondering where you stand as a presidential candidate on the issues of extrajudicial killings. There are at least 1,000, because Mr. Amsterdam spoke at great length about that yesterday and the day before. So I take that as this is part of the WPA's sentiments, that they empathize that there is an absence of sufficiency of justice with regards to extrajudicial killings over the for the tenure of the PPP. As the presidential candidate, I would just like to hear what your position is. Let me touch on some things very briefly. You remember Charles Taylor from Liberia, yes?
Yes, I do.
And he was taken to court on crimes against humanity. Recently, there have been other charges, where there have been issues brought against South Africa. Took Israel to court, all right, on behalf of Palestinians, because Palestine is not a state. So a state can take another state to court on behalf of Guyana. So let's say Suriname or Jamaica or Bahamas can do it. Can take the PPP administration to court on behalf of 1,480. So I'm just laying out that there are pathways for justice. That's in the International Court of Justice as well as the Criminal Court, either or. But what I'm hearing is that we've been complaining about this because here's the thing. You mentioned some very lofty plans, and they're admirable. But how do you intend on implementing those lofty plans with the same old arch enemy of the PPP? So if we're getting there in 2025, when we do, are you saying that you're willing to go up against a murderous PPP with such a track record and not even do anything about it? I'm asking. So it behooves us to get rid of that cesspool once and for all. Indict them. But I can't, because people are saying, well, oh, going to the courts is a waste of time. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. Right? So if we don't start now, when would we ever start? South Africa had to start at some point and take Israel to court. The campaign against apartheid had to start at some point and take somebody to task. So when are we going to address those issues? And once again, thank you for accepting my call.
Thank you for your call. Dr. Hines?
Well, the rule of law is very important to a functioning political economy. And I sense that that's where coffee is driving me to make the linkage between economic development and the functioning of a democracy, rule of law. We in the Working People's Alliance take very seriously the separation of powers. Even as we subscribe to checks and balances, checks and balances must be balanced off with separation of powers. And so the judicial branch has to be given its space to do its work, because the judicial branch is very important to the functioning society. The role of the judicial branch is to interpret the law and to administer the law. And that's a very, very important function. And it cannot be left to the executive branch politicizing the judicial branch. So we will move towards the depoliticization of the judicial branch, the respect for the separation of powers. So I always go back to the coalition time in government. I think the coalition, if I had anything to do with strategy, I would start with the coalition and administration of the rule of law. I think it stands out in Guyana as a shining light, because Guyana's governments in the post-independence era, and indeed the larger English-speaking Caribbean, they've had a problem with the rule of law. And I think the coalition, more than any other government, went furthest in terms of addressing the rule of law. There were no political assassinations during the coalition. People were not picked up and thrown in prison willy-nilly. Human rights, respect for human rights, went up considerably. I think there were serious attempts to deal with the problem in the police force, problem of corruption, etc., etc. And I think those areas need to be built on if and when the coalition gets back into government, right? We have to build on that start that the coalition did, right? It is very important that the judicial branch be allowed its space, its sphere of authority to function. Now, as it regards indicting people, I think the courts have to be allowed to function. The Department of Justice has to, meaning the Attorney General's office, that's what we're calling Department of Justice. We have to have an Attorney General who's not going to be partisan and decide willy-nilly who they're going to go after, who they're going to indict, who they're not going to indict. The WPA wants to stop that kind of political function of the Department of Justice. We have seen this Department of Justice under this attorney go after Winston Jordan, go after the people at GCOM go after this body. No. If people are suspected of crimes against the state and the people of Guyana, we must have professional, non-partisan prosecutors who deal with those issues. They should not be politically driven. And so therefore, we would not be in agreement with a political attorney general who's prepared to use the Department of Justice to go after political opponents. The WPA will put a stop to that. Yes, there are going to be people in this administration who perhaps will have to face the law for infractions of the law, but we will leave that to the professionals, not to the politicians. So, in short, we will depoliticize the Department of Justice. We will depoliticize the Office of the Attorney General. And we will not be in favor of politically motivated indictments.
Yes, Wanda, go ahead.
Hello. Yes. Now, good morning, Kadaki. Dr. Hines mentioned the persons who wanted to know a bit about the history in the early 60s. In my village, I don't know about it, I was told we are then still. And we had people, had Africans living as far as Rumsek, Vince Forest, La Jealousy Estate. They had to come to Denhamsel because they were murdered and burnt out. They had Indians in Denhamsel who lost their lives, and they had 2 Indian families who remained in Denhamsel throughout the disturbances because of how those people used to be ill-behaved. They were with us. People came from the Kendra and Metamaze migrated into our village. Now moving along, I listened to Dr. Hines, I listened to Nigel Hughes, but I have not heard of a plan that will involve women dealing with the abuse, whether it's battery, it's sexual abuse, or physical and mental abuse, or verbal abuse. That is something I have not heard in play, like our law that will look into that. We need laws like that to protect our women, because as we see going on in this fraudulent regime, they do not protect their women. They're not protecting them across the ethnic divide, because we could remember of that minister abusing a female who was an Indian, and nothing was being done. Then Ding and Mrs. Katius, and the list goes on. And not forgetting the Amerindian girls who live a life I don't know what. Imagine a teenager bathing in the opening bushes and the different atrocities that befall our women. I need us to have a proper plan, something in concrete to protect us. Lastly, Dr. Hines spoke about the university. Instead of building hotels, I think that in each region of Guyana, at least Essequibo, Berbice, Linden, New Amsterdam, Berbice that is New Amsterdam too, Linden, let them. And if we could have somewhere along the line, we construct universities. Because when you got people living in these far-flung areas and want to attain universal education, tertiary education, many of them got to uproot their homes, uproot everything just to come out to get that quality of education. And it is high time, with all the money that is circulating in Guyana doing nonsense, to build hotels. You got hotels that are not fully occupied in Guyana. Because many people now, instead of going and staying at the hotels, if they get a bread and breakfast out in the country area, they feel more safe staying there. Lastly, about the blackout last night, I am glad it happened. You know why? APNU had competent persons running power lights. But when the wicked installed regime came, they removed them and they replaced them with the things that they have there. So that was a great achievement to let the world see who the PPP put in has brought them to their face, is as they normally do. So that blackout at the cricket, it served them right. And they got more things like that to befall them. That is my comment, Baba.
Thank you for your comment. Caller, you on. Caller, you on.
Yes, good morning to you. Good morning to all my black brothers and sisters. Also, good morning to you, Mr. David. How are you doing? How is the weather down there by your end?
110 degrees yesterday. I was 110 degrees.
boy, that weather agree with you, boy.
No. That's a boiler flash.
Okay, all right. Well, today I'm going to go easy on you. Let you enjoy your weather. Next week, we're going to do it next week. A man that fight on one shall live to fight another day. Now, let me represent what I said Monday. I'm never say. Well, let me introduce myself first. Good morning to you and my black brother and sister. I'm Sam the Dams. We're going to get there. I forget that word yesterday too. We're going to get there. Now, let me represent from my first grade education what me go. I'm going to put the food for Flash Garden. Let me represent what I said Monday. I said, it is not the time now, as opposition leader looking in, for take anybody, the wicked regime to court now. We don't have no money to take them to court. And our 50,000 lawyers will not donate no time or come together and call a meeting with all the leaders then and say, look, let me take them to court right now. Let me take them to CCJ. I said, what is important right now? Listen to my words. What is important this moment is to come together and fight them, get them out, and then we can afford to jail them because we will be having money to take them to court, if it's international court or right in Guyana. I said that it is not important to take them wicked cabal to court. Let me clear up that. It is everything concerning PPP. When the government change, yes, it's important, but right now, we need to come together and put them out of office. I got many more things to say, but I got to go to a meeting later on. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your call. Dr. Hines?
Well, I mean, the caller they raised the important question of us going forward, and I know that question was posed to Mr. Hughes yesterday morning, and I would like to address that question from the WPA standpoint. I want to say emphatically, our first resort is going to the elections as a coalition. from where we are now, and as I said, one of the things is that we don't have regular polling. I understand people are doing private polls and so on. And I have talked to one or two people who have contact with people who do polling. But from our assessment, we do not believe any single opposition party can be guaranteed of winning an election. Now, I'm not saying that an opposition party can't win the election. That would be crazy of me to say that, because in politics, all things are possible. But I'm saying with the naked eye, given our history of ethnic voting, and given where things are, we do not feel that any opposition party by itself can guarantee winning the election. And so therefore, because of that, and again, let me make a distinction. I am not saying any single opposition party can't win an election. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, given what we are seeing now, it's not a slam dunk. There's no guarantee of that. And so therefore, because it's so important for us to remove this government from office because of the direction in which it's going, it is violating every cardinal principle of governance. And so if we are going to move from where we are now, if we're going to move from growth to development, if we are going to move from being an autocracy to a democracy, then we have to get this government out of the way. And if it is so important to get the government out of the way, you can't gamble in a reckless way. And so the point I'm making, any individual party that thinks that it could win an election on its own, that is opposition party, is taking a big gamble. A very big gamble. And we feel that it is so important to remove this government that we should not be gambling. And so therefore for the WPA, gamble is not a first resort. Our first resort is that the opposition should go to the elections as a coalition. We feel that the principal opposition groups, parties, the FC, the PNC, and the WPA, there are points of agreement. There is enough, or there are enough points of agreement that they can go as a coalition. There are points of disagreement, but I think those points of disagreement are minimal compared with the points of agreement. And so therefore, for us, the first resort has to be coalition. For the WPA, I cannot sit there and pretend that we can win an election on our own. We can't. I mean, I can safely say that. The impossible has happened. But we don't think in 2025 that impossible is going to happen. Right? So we don't start that the WPA can win an election. We think that the WPA can win seats at the election. We think so. But we don't think we can win an election. So it's been foolhardy for me to sit here and say, we think we can win an election and we're going to go on our own. We will go on our own as a last resort. If the PNC and the AFC decide that they're going to go alone, that then leaves us with no option than to go alone. But that's going to be a last resort. The first resort is coalition, because it's the common sense thing to do. That you should not be gambling on trying to win 50.2%, but you should come together and give yourselves a better chance of getting 55% or 56%. And so that is where we stand on coalition. All right? Now, we don't want to tell our partners what to do. We can't tell our partners what to do. We agree that each party should be building up its stocks, because one of the problems we had the last time was that the big party felt that the smaller parties brought little or nothing, and so sought to govern as a one party. It was a coalition, but there were instances where they governed not as a coalition, but as a one party. And so the burden is now on smaller parties, like the AFC, like the WPA, to not risk that. That is, that when we go to the table, we should be able to say, these are areas of strength that we bring. We bring this area of strength. And so Nigeria's argument about building up the stock of his party is well taken. And the WPA does not disagree with that. In fact, we are in the business of doing that also. But I am saying that we have to be very careful that we do not err on the side of building up our individual stuff while allowing the collective to suffer. Now, human beings act based on perception. And from my reading, from our reading of what's happening in the principal base of the opposition, is that the supporters prefer us to go as a coalition. I don't have any data to prove that conclusion. But based on what I read, based on the interaction I have with people on my program, interaction I have with people on the ground in Guyana, I think the base would be more fired up, to use Obama's term, if they see a coalition. The very fact of the coalition, I think, cements those who would have voted for the individual parties. But it would bring in people who may not be interested in the individual parties, but interested in a coalition. And I think the longer we take to come up with a coalition, the more difficult we are making it for the coalition voters in our base to be mobilized. At present, we are mobilizing the party members of the base, the PNC people, the AFC people, the WPA people. But there are people who are not for any of those individual parties. They are for a coalition. And the fact that we don't have a coalition right now, we are not mobilizing those people. I am introducing something new here this morning because I've been thinking about it. And I think we are a little bit one track. We are mobilizing our party people, our potential party supporters. Good, wonderful. But we are not mobilizing a significant section of our base that is not grounded in individual parties, but grounded in the notion of coalition. And I think that's where we are not getting it right at the moment. So WPA position is very clear. Our first line of action is coalition. That going along with coalition, we must inspire those people who support us as individual parties. But we must also inspire those who have little time for the individual parties, but could be mobilized when the bell of the coalition rings. In 2011, remember, in 2006, the PNC got 34% of the vote. In 2011, it got close to 44% of the vote. It means that the 10% people, the 10% more that it got, are people who were inspired by the notion of coalition, a la APNU. And there is a generation of voters in the opposition base that are coalition people. They voted for APNU in 2011 and they voted for coalition in 2015. So that 18-year-old in 2011 would have been born in 1993, voted at age 18 in 2011 for APNU. In 2015, coalition. In 2020, coalition. It means that 31-year-old, 32, 33, 35-year-old is not socialized to vote PNC, WPA, because PNC and WPA weren't on the ballot in 2011, 2015, and 2020. AFC was on the ballot in 2011, but not on 2015 and 2020. So we have an entire generation that is socialized to vote coalition. And I think our strategists in the parties are getting this coalition thing wrong. They're appealing to their individual chunk of the base. They're not appealing to the coalition chunk of the base. And I think that could come back to hurt us if we don't get our act together. So I just wanted to make the WPA position very clear. We think first line of action, coalition. And then you go to the other things afterwards or simultaneously. You've muted yourself, brother. We're not hearing.
Start over, please. The mic was muted. Sorry. I'm very sorry.
I'm saying good morning to you, Gaddafi and Mr. Hinds, and your panel. I totally agree with what the last information that Dr. David Hinds has been saying with coalition. But I'm sorry I didn't get to get Mr. Nigel Hughes yesterday when he was on your program. Because I have one question for Mr. David Hinds. Other than that, when I look at it, we are sending the wrong signal to our people when we're not talking about coalition early, because it looks like everybody wants individual power, and that's not what we need to show presently. It should show that you want to be united and you want to share it. So coalition is the way forward, and get the PPP out. Now, Mr. David Hinds, one question I would just like to ask you: are you willing, when you put forward your manifesto, to sign to your manifesto on whatever you say that on your manifesto that is what you want to do, and execute it in a timely manner, or a timely pattern? That's my own question today.
Thank you. Caller, in future when you call this program, address the professor as professor or doctor.
All right, sorry, my humble apology, Dr. Hinds or Professor Hinds. My humble apology. Thank you.
Have a good day. No, Dr. Hinds,
Caller Kidaki's playing with you. We are not
No, I'm very serious. It's no joking matter. You know, these people walk around the place and talk about Dr. Ali and Dr. Jagdi and Dr. this and Dr. that. And these people have earned nothing to call them doctor. But you will put in all your work to be doctor, professor, they call you full mouth. No, man. That's when you're up on the street car. Don't do it on this program. The lines are made open 6225933 is the number to call. Sometimes, you know.
Can I answer the caller's question?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, no. I think each party is working on its own manifesto. And at some point, we have to bring the manifestos together if we are going to go as a coalition. And we hope we go as a coalition. We bring the manifesto of the parties together into a coalition manifesto. The thing about manifesto is difficult to govern based on manifesto. Because you see, the manifesto of your party. If you're going in as a coalition, then your party's manifesto is only part of the coalition's manifesto. And then when you're governing, you can't govern based just on the coalition. You have to govern based on all of Guyana. And one of the problems we have now in Guyana is the PPP is governing based on the PPP's manifesto. And the PPP's gaze and instincts are developed based on its support base. And so what it brings to the table at governance is a limited gaze based on its manifesto. It's a PPP manifesto. For Guyana, when you get in there to govern, you have to govern partly on your manifesto, but partly on your larger vision of the country that includes the people who are not voting for you. So the thing about manifesto is very tricky. Manifesto is your overall plan. What is it you want to do, right? Arising out of your vision. But you have to be very careful not to impose that manifesto on the country. So I would say, if I were a numbers guy, I would say half of what you take to the table should be from your manifesto. But the other half has to deal with the concrete situation that you meet when you go in there to govern. Because your manifesto does not necessarily capture when you get in there, what you will see. So yes, part of the manifesto has to be there in governance, but we have to leave space for when we get in there and we see the lay of the land to be able to pivot and to deal with the realities. So I would say somewhere 50-50, some people argue 60-40, etc. Desiree saying, sorry to say, but the WPA, AFC, etc. holding the coalition to ransom if they claim that they need more time. Desiree, David Hines is saying explicitly here this morning on behalf of the WPA, we do not need more time. So you need to take WPA out of your list there. We are not claiming more time. We are saying coalition is a first resort. It should have been there yesterday because there is a critical mass of voters, we think, who are going to be driven to the polls. But don't let me take back the word driven. Who are going to be influenced in going to the polls if they are satisfied that we have a broad enough coalition. So there's really no, WPA is not asking for time. We are doing our work for our party, but not at the expense of the coalition.
Thank you. Final call for the day. Caller, you're on. Caller, you're on.
Good morning, Dr. Hines.
Good morning, sis.
How are you? I see Kadaki knocking your left, right, and center. You better turn around and bring some cups of water on you. Listen, Dr. Hines. You've been saying that a long time ago. Coalition. This is my personal opinion. Nobody knocks me for it. I think the AFC might be the one where no, they're going there, but they're not there yet. I'm new, they're there, but they're watching on. You are ready for it. Those two are still there, but at the end of the day, they would have left their backside outside, let it keep clean, and they know what is going on in that country. I'm going to give the day. I always, from the time when that lies and Kabaki have to show, I always say why the opposition is not following up and talking about certain things. Uh, PPP, APNB, AFC people, they talking the same thing. Why the coalition? Get into the coalition because a lot of people slip over to the PPP or slip over to the AFC. So then you got to use your imagination, use your eyes on what is going on and get the ball rolling because we want them people to live happy. You know what? No damn road. Them road were uphill. Like, I don't know what is going on. When you put a camera to it, check to see how much layer is the road falling in. We want proper things. We want proper things. We want to live in the town. If the people them live in the town. This is what I want to do. That cost $1,000, then make the thing doable and proper. So this is what we want. People get up off of the feeling and give the country a let go. Jeez, we got eyes, we got backside, we got timber. Let us stand tall and then we could say, God, look for that for eyes, look for that, look for the coalition that's done for us. Let's move on. Dr. Hans, have a pleasant day. Could I please have a pleasant day?
Thank you, Carla. Have a good day.
Thanks for the sentiment, sister. I noticed a question on the table. Look,
Just for Dr. Hines, let me play Dr. Hines, let me play this voice note. And then I'll allow you to respond and close the program at the same time. Is that okay, sir?
Yes.
Thank you for that voice note. I was told that the voice note wasn't heard. Did you hear the voice note, Dr. Hines?
No, I did not.
I wonder why. All right, let me play it again. All right, let me play it from the phone. The lines, the lines are not opened. Where did that voice note come from? I think this is it.
Good morning, Kadaki, Dr. Hines, and viewers. I understand what Dr. Hines is saying about the coalition, but the problem from the last coalition they had was distribution of seats and who bring what seats, and there's a problem. Who bring what seats? So I think each, especially Nigeria youth, they're trying to build up the base. So when they sit at the table, they can say, listen, I can have 7 seats or 8 or 9 seats. But if you just think about the coalition, the same problem occurred. The same animosity that was there, how much seat you are bringing to the table. I think that's a problem. And what about Dr. Hughes? What you were saying, he believed in post-collation. So after the election, then you collate. I think that's a better option. So each party can work on their own, get their own seats, and so after the election, they bring those seats together. What do you think about that? Have a good day.
Thank you for that voice note. There's one other I need to play, and then
It's bigger than that. Kind of damage that GDP has done. All you have to restructure that whole country. It's not just education and health and these things. The whole system has to revamp. So I like the way how we're thinking and you're on course. But listening to you this morning, I'm listening to Nigel yesterday. I want Kakaraki to play Nigel for 5 minutes. You for 5 minutes. And Jadeo on the live conference for 5 minutes. And let people judge and see which one or who makes most sense. I have one.
thank you for that voice note. Dr. Hines, kindly respond and wrap up. Viewers, let me say to you, if it appears as though I am rushing out of here, I need to rush out of here. And please don't call me in the course of the day. I think I really need to shut down and deal with my physical needs. Thank you. Dr. Hines, go ahead.
Yes, I want to say good morning to my mother, who I notice is in the audience this morning. She's almost 85 years old, and she's more nimble with this social media thing than most of our children. So, mommy, good morning.
Keeping tabs on you.
But don't call me after the program because I got to go and sleep. So, morning, it's good to see your 85-year-old mother on listening to you, and it's quite humbling. And pardon me, because it's my mother, and I've told the story of my mother migrating to the United States very early, 1969, I think it was, and lived not too far from Howard University. And, so she would pass Howard University up and down. And apparently formed in her head that one of her children would go to Howard University. She didn't know how much it costs, how it gonna be paid. But in her head, thing. And so I suppose that's how I ended up at Howard University, where I did my master's and my PhD, thanks to my mother, who lived near to Howard University and dreamt and things. It's always very difficult sometimes to speak in the presence of family members. I'm her son, and and I have to treat her now as my student. But mommy, don't call me after the program. I go in and sleep. So one of the callers asked if we would prefer a situation where you collate after elections. Exactly. We would prefer that. Then you don't have any problem of figuring out who bring what and who didn't bring what and so on. You go to the election, each party get their votes and then you collate as the UF and the PNC did in 1964. That is not allowed under this constitution. So we have to collate before. I think, and the call is right, the problem of the distribution of seats and so on will come up in any coalition deliberations. And, people will be shooting in the dark because no one will know exactly what is the strength of each party. I have a theory, I walk around and I use Buxton, but even beyond Buxton, I think the average supporter of the opposition has divided support, if you will. I think about a good half of the opposition supporters will tell you that they like all three opposition parties. They may like PNC 70%, but they like a little 15% of Hughes and a little 15% of HINDS and WPA. I think that's the kind of base that we've developed in the last decade and a half. And so it's very difficult in the absence of parties going by themselves to figure out who got more support and who got less support and so on. And that is always going to be a problem. So I understand Nigel trying to build up the AFC and to use that if and when the negotiation comes. I think we can do both simultaneously. I think we can build up our individual parties while at the same time having a kind of preliminary coalition that is to give our people that that feeling that we are not going to disappoint them. So I think we can do both. Each party can do its own work, work among the constituency, the part of the constituency that they feel an affinity to, while at the same time giving our people a sense of coalition. Now, I will not be carried tails out to school. We in the WP have good relations with the AFC. Well, certainly the AFC leader. We have good relations with the PNC leader. It is no secret to the country that I am in constant contact with the PNC leader. Constant contact, and it's not small talk. Often it's political issues that we discuss, and I am not at liberty to say here what we discussed as it relates to coalition, right? But we are in constant contact. Usually the PNC leader would ask my opinion on a range of national issues that he has to contend with. So I just want to say our relations are good. I would say very good relation with the PNC at the level of the leadership, although they're not kind of party to party meetings or such, but at the level of the leadership. The same is true with the AFC leader, although we are not in as frequent contact as between the PNC and the WP. So I just want to say that we have very good relations. And I noticed Nigel said that yesterday. We have good relations, but we have not moved from good relations to concretely talking about coalition. Somebody said if the youths are socialized into voting coalition and not PNC or WPA, Can Dr. Hines explain why the WPA pulled out of the coalition? WPA was thrown out of the APNU because the seat that was granted to us, the leader of the list, gave the seat to someone who we did not instruct him to give the seat to. That person subsequently left the WPA. So the WPA was left with no parliamentary representation within the coalition. What are we doing there? So we left the APNU because we were basically thrown out. I repeat what happened. We instructed the leader of the list that the one seat that he intended to give to the WPA should go to a particular WPA member. He ignored our instruction and gave the seat to another WPA member who subsequently left the WPA. We had no choice. That's what happened. But despite the fact that we left the APNU, in many regards, we remain part of the coalition, although we're not in parliament. If we were in parliament, automatically we would be in the coalition. But we are not in the parliament, and nothing has been done about getting that seat to us since then. Nothing has been done in 4 years to get that seat to the WPA. Nothing has been done by the leader of the list to get that seat to the WPA. There have been attempts to deal with the issue, but at the end of the day, it is the leader of the list. And the person who's holding the seat can resign the seat, and hopefully they would have given it to WPA. The person has not resigned the seat, and the leader of the list has not recalled the person and said this seat should go to the WPA. So we were thrown out. And sometimes people need to know these facts before they make these statements. Despite the fact that we are not part of the APNU, we remain part of the coalition in the sense that our politics are aligned with the coalition. You look at Kedaki's program, you look at my program, we carry a coalition line. The people we have on are coalition people. When there was a meeting at a coalition public meeting at Burnham Court 2 years ago and at Golden Grove, the WPA was on the platform, along with the AFC and the PNC. So we are de facto part of the coalition, although de jure we have been kicked out because the person in charge felt otherwise, and they have done nothing to give us the seat which belongs to us. So I just wanted to clarify that. But to say that we are pro-coalition, we feel that coalition should not occur at the end of the process. That the earlier we signal that we are going into coalition, the better chance we have of mobilizing voters who are not necessarily likely to go and vote for us as an individual party, but who will most likely be moved to vote for a coalition. And I think the young people are the ones who fall a lot in that category. Because like I said, if you're 30-something years old, you grew up in coalition. And so it is the young people, I think a strategy for the young people is really to take the coalition to them as a means of getting them to the poll. The usual thing is to wait till near the election to negotiate the coalition. That is what usually happens. That's what happened in 2011 and in 2015. Remember, in 2015, the coalition was negotiated in February, the February accord, and the election was in, I think, May. So the coalition was worked out a couple of months before the election. I think this time around, it will serve us better if we negotiate the coalition early and use that as a mobilization tool. Thank you. I think.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. I see I have to show up for you to wrap up. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I am sorry. Don't call me for the rest of the day. Maybe later in the evening. I need to take care of me. Self-care day today. Those of you who are trying to get to the Cash App and you're not getting there, kindly use Zelle as the alternative. Whenever we get the Cash App rectified, you'll be so informed. Thank you for joining the program. Have a good day. Goodbye.